Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Writers Chat. We're so glad you're here with us, whether you're here with us right this minute or watching the replay. My name is Johnny Alexander. I am joined by my co-hosts, Melissa Stroh and Brandy Bro, and Norma Poor, who is going to introduce our very special guest.
Well, I am so excited and honored to introduce DiAnn Mills as our speaker today. And our topic is not as lighthearted, perhaps, as it's been in recent weeks. We're going to be talking about writing personal tragedies with grace, surviving life's challenges that threaten our physical, mental, and spiritual well-being with determination to help others take courage. To write about the experience forces the writer to explore painful emotions and relive the tragedy repeatedly. The tragedy could be a death, a divorce, a betrayal, PTSD, abandonment, or a cauldron of more than one event. What makes us different is we feel it's worth the heartache and we're willing to write about what happened to us to help someone else survive the same or similar ordeal. So today, DiAnn's going to show us how to create a manuscript in any genre that honors the tragedy and focuses on the needs of the reader with grace. And if you've joined us late, there's a handout on our Facebook members page, so be sure to grab that. And let me tell you a little bit about DiAnn. She is a best-selling author who believes her readers should expect an adventure. Her titles have appeared on the CBA and ECPA bestseller lists. She has won 2 Christy Awards, a Golden Scroll Inspirational Reader's Choice, and Selah Awards. DiAnn teaches writing all over the country, and you can contact her at DiAnnMills.com. DiAnn, welcome, and we are looking forward to what you have for us today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to begin by sharing my screen because I have some slides for you. And with that, let me just bring that in there. Here we go, ladies. Writing personal tragedies with grace. I have to say that most of you are either needing to write about a character who is going through a personal tragedy or experienced it, or perhaps you have gone through that tragedy. And everything that was said about this workshop, I hope that you will get the tools that you need and have a little more wisdom and insight as to how you can write about a personal tragedy so that it helps others. You know, Rick Warren in The Purpose-Driven Life said, it's not about you. And so as a writer, I have to say, it's not about me. It never is about me. It's what we are offering to that reader. If you've been in many or any of my workshops, you know that I am all about writing fiction with a purpose. Number one, to entertain. I want to entertain my readers with an adventure, but I also write to inspire that reader and to encourage them no matter where they are. And that's where this particular workshop comes into play. Surviving life's challenges that threatens our physical, our mental, and our spiritual lives. We have to have determination to overcome those, and it takes guts. I could be nice and say it takes courage, but you know, there's more than that. It takes guts. The most important question to ask yourself is why? What is my goal in putting myself through this pain and agony one more time. Do I want to relive that painful event? Can I do it? I've shed tears. I've gone through the many, many steps of grief many times. Why do I want to do that? And as was said a few minutes ago, those tragedies, those painful events, they can be a death, betrayal, PTSD, abandonment, or a cauldron of more than one event. What makes us different is that we as writers, we are able to process those emotions and fill a reader with tools and skills and the ability to work through their own ordeal. And the emotions that erupt during the writing are raw, intimate, sacred, and real. And if you receive nothing from what I want to present to you today, I hope you'll remember those four things: raw, intimate, sacred, and real. This may be the hardest project you've ever attempted, but it may be your best writing. You have chosen from among all the genres your method to recreate your experience. And it could be fiction, nonfiction, memoir, blog post, an article, a short story, a Bible study, a devotional, poetry, even a screenplay. Through your writing, the reader will find that necessary insight and wisdom into knowing themselves just a little bit better and being able to walk through the tragedy. This benefits and enriches your reader's life. Sorrow affects all of us in various ways, and a writer needs to be aware of not only their own emotions, but how others are affected. Understanding the psychology of personalities helps us process the feelings not only of ourselves, but of our readers. There's mental, and that can result with depression that may require counseling or medication, and that's okay. If you are suffering from depression of any sort, think about it. If you had a heart condition, or if you were diabetic, you would be taking medication for that. So take care of yourself. Number two, physical. When we are grieving, we can go through physical health issues from colds, flu, chronic headaches, migraines, high blood pressure, heart attack, or even a stroke. So understand those signs so that you as a writer, if you're going through those, you need some help. Spiritual. Sometimes sufferers of tragedies, they blame God, and some even walk away from their faith. Your writing, whatever you're choosing to write about, can help draw them back into the sheep's fold. Emotional. We suffer through emotions that affect us in ways we never imagined. Our mental, physical, and spiritual health are impacted, and these don't happen in an organized manner. It doesn't work as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or up to 12. They can all come in at the same time. They can be repeated, and we need to understand that about ourselves and whatever we're writing. I'm a survivor of a personal crisis. In July 2021, our son, who was 44 at the time, was hit it was a hit and run pedestrian accident, and it came totally unexpected, and it was tough. The anger, the grief, the shaking my fist at God, the journaling, all of that came into play. What happened was, once the funeral was over, I had a novel to write. And when I looked at that novel, I saw that in my brief synopsis, I'm a seat of the pants writer, I had an FBI agent who witnessed a hit and run of her brother. And I thought, okay, God was preparing me in multiple ways to write this story and work through my grief. I had 3 reasons for using my own experience in writing this story. Number 1, it was to show others in an unthreatening environment how a character walked through the grief and sorrow to achieve healing. Number 2, it was my personal healing book. And number 3, I achieved a lot of spiritual healing, and my relationship with God, my relationship with Jesus and the Holy Spirit, it just grew, and it continues to grow. So the book I wrote, Facing the Enemy, came from a personal tragedy that resulted in healing. There will always be a melancholy void in my heart, always, always. And I don't want that to go away. If you experienced a death, you understand that. You want to remember the good times, but you also understand that that void will always be there. Many of you have asked, where do I begin? And I've received the emails that say, what are the guidelines? How is the writing accomplished? How do I handle the depression of living through the nightmare? Part of the problem is describing the painful events from my past in a memoir. How much detail is too much? I'm stuck because it's painful writing my story on how I overcame fill in the blanks. Time organization. I need help with the time organization. I know I need to write this, but I don't want to. I do, and I don't want to. How do I revisit painful memories? Right now, I'm in the middle of the grief and the journaling. Is now the right time to write about my story, my happening, or should I let some time pass? How do I put my difficult memories in a form that can be used to help others? So with that, I've taken comments from the writers, and this is what I want to say. I want to help people learn to lean on God in hard times. I want to share what I've experienced and to reach people who have been in similar circumstances. I have a strong desire to help those struggling with stress, addictions, traumas, and who may even be considering suicide. I want to inspire others and bring them hope. Oh my. One lady said, my brother died at the hands of a terrorist attack in 2002. I want to write how this attack, his death, impacted my family life. I have been through situations in life that I think can encourage people. and yet it's painful to write about them. I want to write a memorial and give an opportunity to help others who have experienced the murder of a loved one. I can't simply put the memory aside. I have something important to say. And I'm in a season of great loss and want to share with others what I'm experiencing in order to help them move forward. Perhaps that's you, writers, and I want to address those questions and help you with reflections for you to consider. Exploration 1, examining the writer. Our personal crisis, the writing project, as I said at the beginning, it's not about us, it's about the reader. How can we help a reader journey through a similar tragedy that will bring healing and growth from a horrendous situation? For many, the event is unthinkable. When we make the project about ourselves, we look selfish, insensitive to others who have experienced the same heartache. And it focuses on writer validation with a tone of pity. We don't want that. None of us want to be viewed in that manner. Grace allows us to help the reader and the writer heal. A writer must have victory over their crisis before he or she can write about it. In the beginning, our feelings, our emotions, they're raw and bleeding. We're hurt, we're angry, we're depressed, and we are desperately craving answers and a plethora of other emotions, and often more than one, and at the same time. We can't be subjective about the incident if we haven't worked through the trauma and found peace. A journal is our best friend. The written accounting of the event allows us to record honestly how we felt. And it is your best resource of exposing hurt and pain. And yet, the writer needs to stay positive and optimistic. If the project is destined to bring peace and healing to others and ourselves, then the writer must stay attentive to signs that they may not be ready to write. So, in a few paragraphs, you might want to jot this down, but I know this is being recorded. State what happened. Who was with you? Record the setting, the dialogue, the immediate emotions. And if you need a box of tissues beside you, that is okay. Here's another question for you to jot down. What have you learned during your healing that will help others? What have you learned? Did you make mistakes that you advise others not to make? You know, it is not wrong to admit that you turn to a few addictive behaviors when you were trying to cover that pain up. If that is what you went through and that's what you don't want someone else to go through, don't be afraid to be honest about it. What pitfalls made your recovery slow? On your handouts, you will find exercises to help you walk through the process of writing these difficult pieces. And when the workshop is over, I encourage you to complete these and feel free to contact me with questions. You can email me by going through my website at DiAnn@DiAnnMills.com. Nope, that's my email, DiAnn@DiAnnMills.com. Feel free to use it. And the following is included on your handout. Why do you want to write about your personal tragedy? Number 2, what have you learned about yourself and life during the crisis? Number 3, how can your experience benefit the reader? Number 4, who are your readers? Number 5, what universal need or theme are you addressing? Number 6, how does the project help the reader? Number 7, what mistakes would you like your reader to avoid? So you've heard that from me twice because they're important. One writer said to me, my book is my therapy. I've overcome mental, emotional, and physical pain. Another writer posed, although I could feel the pain, I couldn't bleed. I could feel the temperament and brokenness in my bones, but until I couldn't handle the pain anymore, then I had to write. So I'm going to give you another little brief story that happened to me. Edie Melson, which many of you know, Alicia Morales, and Hallie Bridgman. We are all very, very close friends. In November of 2020, during COVID, our Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference was held in November. Edie and I did it together. I was directing then. And right after the conference had passed, she called me in tears because her daughter-in-law had been killed in a tragic accident. She got thrown from a tractor and was run over by a brush hog. That was in November. In June, I felt that God was telling me I needed to resign from directing that directorship. It was very, very strong. I didn't understand why, but I did. 2 weeks later, after that happened, is when our son was killed in the hit and run. No, I back up. In January 1st, Alicia Morales lost her son in a car accident. In June, I resigned. In July, I lost Brett. A year later, Hallie lost her son in a hit and run. All of us were close friends. All of us helped each other through the tragedies. All of us were in a writing ministry. That was no accident. God knew that. So I want you to understand that you're not alone, whatever you have gone through. So let's move on. I repeat from our writing that it must be raw, intimate, sacred, and real, incredibly real to the reader. None of us will ever forget what happened, neither do we want to forget. Our time, over time and with healthy habits, the pain softens. Treasured memories keep the love in our hearts alive. But as I said earlier, that melancholy void will always be there. The writer is not a victim, but a survivor. We were victims when the tragedy, whatever it may be, hit, but we are a survivor. Exploration 2 is, how do I get organized? You know, we've been going through all of these emotions and the ups and the downs. How do we get organized? If you could tell your story and it's not about you, then you are ready to write. Let me repeat that. if you can tell the story and it's not about you, then you're ready to write. I encourage you to find 6 other people who have experienced a personal crisis. Record their stories. Ask them how they survived. Tell your story through theirs. That may be one of the hardest things you can do. But when we understand we're all in the same fold of sheep, we've all experienced a tragedy of some sort, then we've got to be able to help each other by audibly telling and writing our story. And organization is the key. List chronologically what happened before, during, and after the tragedy. And I'm so glad this is being recorded, because some of these things you need to hear again to understand the value. Number 1, what was your age when it happened? Number 2, were you prepared in any way for the tragedy? Number 3, where were you when it happened? Number 4, describe the setting. Some of these may sound familiar, but they, dear friends, they are so vitally important. Number 5, who was present? Number 6, if others were present, how did they react? Number 7, what was the conversation? Number 8, how did you initially react? I remember being numb. I remember thinking, I am totally paralyzed, emotionally and physically. I could not believe the news was true. Number 9, how did others seek to help you through the tragedy? Number 10, what are your thoughts and emotions now? Number 11, do you have unhealed physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual scars? Number 12, is your culture a factor in your experience, your vocabulary, your purpose, and meaning? Number 13, does environment play a role in your experience? Number 14, what universal need or theme are you addressing? Number 15, how does the project help the reader? Organization. What are the writer guidelines? How far do I go? How deep do I go? What is the border of, this is beginning to sound all about me instead of all about the reader? The goal for any writing project is to keep that reader engaged. In fiction, it's to keep them entertained. In nonfiction, it's showing them a concept, a process, educating the reader about something. For the nonfiction, we need to ensure that we establish specific goals. For that matter, whatever genre you're writing in, please establish those goals. And as I stated previously, the writer must have experienced some victory, some healing before the piece is effective. The piece that's all about you, the writing piece, is in your journal. So that way you can tell the difference. Study the craft, specifically the genre containing your event. And this may mean that you've got to develop some more writing skills, that you may need to take some courses. That's okay. You want to value and respect what you are writing. You want to use correct grammar, punctuation, use short paragraphs, and adhere to the Chicago Manual of Style. Or if you have a specific publisher in mind, do they have guidelines? If you're writing a memoir, I encourage you to structure it like a fiction, using literary techniques that make the fiction an engaging read, establish a theme, clear point of view, characterization, plot, sensory perception, emotion, setting, dialogue, and symbolism. If using the tragedy as a fiction, use those same techniques, but understand the incidents don't have to follow exactly what happened in your case. For example, in Facing the Enemy, she experienced my emotions through her personality and what she was experiencing through the story. So that is a way that you can do that. If you're writing nonfiction, again, use a few of the fiction techniques to keep the reader attentive to your project. Understand what you want to accomplish with that nonfiction. It's devotional, if it's a poetry, if it's a blog post, whatever you are doing. Write accurately, and don't be afraid to use just a little bit of humor when appropriate to lighten an otherwise very, very difficult reading project. And show, don't tell. Always keep a list of resources. I don't care what you're writing, always keep a list of resources. Read other projects in which the writer used a personal tragedy to create their manuscript, even poetry. Be aware of sharing too much. Each one of us grieves differently, and sharing too much information does make that project about us. Oh, feel sorry for me, instead of, I want to make you heal. And not make you heal, help you heal, and strive for uniqueness. How do I incorporate emotions? Writing is an art form, a means to use words laced with emotion, depth, and the ability to teach. A writer needs to understand his or herself to write accurately. Consider how you were shown to model behavior as a child. Think about this. How did your mother comfort you? Or maybe she didn't. How did your father comfort you? Or maybe he didn't. Who comforted you during your tragedy? How are you comforted now? The sounds of words, for example, hard consonants are harsh, whether as soft consonants and long vowels are soothing. Think about symbols, colors, rhythm. They all affect us emotionally. Do you have a symbol or a trigger connected to your event? The takeaway for the reader is rooted in emotion. Always, always emotion. Writing from a personal tragedy is not easy. Your project requires ripping open old scars, stretching your ability to craft a powerful project, and seeing it through edits and revisions. For me, the grief resurfaced during the book launch. All over again, I was reliving things. The few times I have given this particular workshop, I feel that bubbling up of emotions all over again. And those emotions are going to stalk you. But what is the purpose? Is it not to help someone else to heal? So understand you may relive those emotions again, and it's okay. I've got a tissue right here on my desk just in case something hits me just a little hard. Thinking about Edie again, thinking about Alicia, then God preparing me by having me resign as director of Blue Ridge Conference, going through that horrific call again, and then watching Hallie go through her tragedy. Yeah, it's tough, but what is the good? What's God calling you to do? None of us face a personal crisis quite the same way. It's because we're all unique. We all have our own personalities. So I encourage you to be prepared. Writing personal tragedies with grace takes courage, but you can do it. Do you have the grace and the courage to step out and help others through your personal story? Because I think you do. So right now, let me stop sharing the screen and let's see here what kind of questions that we have, because that's best how we learn. I could have asked you to do some of those questions, but we're on a live Zoom here, and that's personal. I remember years ago teaching a characterization class in which it was live in person, and on the front row was a lady. And when I posed the question that said, what is your most painful experience? And I gave them a few minutes to write it down, post some of the same questions that I just gave you. And she said, no, I can't do it. And her eyes were filled with tears. So I suggested when she got home that she write her most painful experience and record the things that I've already given you. And it's not that I didn't forget about her, but about 18 months later, I was at an ACFW conference. And at that time, Barber Publishing gave a new writer their very first contract. She won. And Rebecca Germany told her at that conference that when I read that first chapter, that horrible, painful experience that the character went through, I knew I had to have that book. And so she shared with me later that she had gone home. She had taken my advice to write that experience out, and then she massaged it into her book, and it became her first published book. So it was tough. She had tears, but she faced her fears, and she was able to write that book. So what questions do you have that as a group here, we can help each other?
We had a question from Kathy, and I think you've touched on this, but just to maybe go into a little bit deeper. How do you become victorious if not through the writing? Can the first draft be our catharsis and the final product be what is turned into what the readers read or what the readers need? I'm sorry.
Okay, I think that in that first writing, if the writer has not done journaling, that first draft can have way too much in it about the writer. And by the time they finish the piece, and I mean writing piece or the writing project, give it some time to just set, and then go back and take a look at, okay, this had too much information. It was more about me than the reader. And start the revision process. But I also encourage the writer to keep what they may need to take out.
Right.
It's all healing, and we want the writer to be as victorious as the reader. Alicia Morales just finished, and I read it last week for endorsement, a Bible study that she has written after the loss of her son. And it was hard for me to read it because I knew what she was going through, but it is well done. I think that she plans to self-publish it, and she wants to do it in July, which meant I had to hurry. But July, I believe, is National Parent Grieving Month or something along the line that it falls in to that. And so it's been, 3 years for her to now to be able to write that. And so if you are still hurting, if that divorce, that abandonment, that loss, the PTSD, whatever it is still affecting you, dear writer, then you may need to wait and experience a little more victory on your side first.
We also have a comment from Stephanie that I'm going to read because it's so cute and sweet. She said, "Humor helps indeed. When my husband was going into surgery, my daughter said to him, 'If you see the white light, don't go into it.' She wasn't ready to let him go. None of us weren't. Thankfully, God wasn't ready to take him. Win-win." So yeah, if you can write with humor too, that's
This is
a
true.
blessing.
Oh yeah, I love that. A little bit of humor. The family now, sometimes when we're talking, we'll talk about how my son would always say, "Now perhaps," or "perhaps," and we can do that with a little humor because it brings back fond memories of us. But I do like that white light, and that does help. Somebody said something about, "I don't think I'll ever get over it," and maybe that's okay. Do we want to forget a loved one? No. It's just how we allow God to heal us to a point that maybe what we share from our grief will help them. And I'll admit that I don't think everybody can do it. If you feel called to do it, by all means, do so. But if you don't, then you may do yourself more harm than good, or it will become a self-help book just for you. And that's okay too.
Yeah. I don't know, if I've missed any questions. So why don't we just ask, this is a good time for people to come back on. And if you have a question or a comment that you want to make on video, you can do that. And if I've missed your question, I'm really sorry. I've been trying to scroll through, but I'm not, it's so small. I'm having trouble. I want to make sure I see everything. Okay.
Well, Kathy said that she really doesn't know how to respond well when she had a pre-reader that said that's not how anxiety or depression works. Your character can't respond like that. But she had written and about how she reacted during an episode, so she know that it can happen for some people, but the reader didn't think it was genuine, and so she's how do I respond to them nicely while understanding that they probably aren't the ones that the story is meant for? So, it's like when you portray certain emotions on a page that doesn't resonate with some readers because they've had a different experience, how do you handle that?
I can give you an example, but like you just said, if that is what she experienced, then she knows it's a reality. So that takes some weighing as to where that reader was coming from. Perhaps the reader had never walked through that type of a tragedy, or their personality was so different that it never would happen. And while you were saying that, I thought, oh yeah, I do remember a spot. I was angry. I was really, really angry about what happened, the hit and run, the all of that. I was angry. And I remember taking that anger in the story and having my character do something I would never do. And she lost it. To be blunt, she lost it. She went back later and apologized, but she lost it. But I understood that. I lost it. I was right down angry. God, how can this kid who, took off from the scene of the accident, comes back 6 hours later and turns himself in, didn't do jail time, and got a plea bargain by confessing to another crime? How can you let him drive a car? And it makes me angry just thinking about it. It has nothing to do with forgiveness. It has to do with dealing with honest emotions. I think that perhaps the writer you're talking about went through honest emotions. And that would have to be weighed as to how do I best present this? But none of us are alike. All of us experience life and its tragedies in a different way.
Anyone else have a question or comment?
I have a comment.
Sure.
I think it's important for us to remember as we write that just because we experience an event a certain way doesn't mean that everybody experiences it the same way. Kind of like, that reader that says, well, that wasn't my experience. And she just kind of put this big lumps thing onto everybody. Well, this is how I experience, that's how everybody in this situation experiences that. And so it's good to remember that, our experiences are genuine and real, but they're not shared by everybody. Some will share it and others won't. Just to not put everybody into a stereotype.
Right. And in a general form, not every book we write appeals to every reader. If that's the case, all of our books would be on the bestseller list, because there's some who just the message wasn't there for them, the storyline wasn't there for them, for whatever. And that's something we all have to come to learn and accept, that we're not going to please everybody, but boy, we're going to do our best to write the best possible book available.
Okay, Leslie has a question. If it is too hard to write about something now, should you switch to write something else or just focus on journaling to work through the pain? And Leslie is a fiction author, so she's writing fiction.
I encourage you to continue journaling and work on another project. You'll know when you're ready. You'll know. And when that time comes, you'll be able to take the project out and start working on it again. That doesn't mean you won't experience a few tears, but it will mean that you are ready. Your spirit is ready to put that tragedy on paper.
I have a question.
Yes.
DiAnn, what would be if you had to narrow it down to your top 3 pieces of advice for someone, whether they write fiction or nonfiction, and they're just struggling with the pain of it, what would those 3 things be?
The pain of writing about a tragedy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The top 3 things is, number 1, journal. And with journaling, that needs to come with prayer. As though you're opening up that journal and saying, "Dear Lord, this is what I feel." Stay in the Word. Number 2, stay in the Word. And number 3, look around for the way God has put things out there to help you heal. This morning, I was in the pool and I could see the moon. It was not quite full, but pretty close. And the birds were just singing, 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 singing. And those are the kinds of things when we're grieving, we tend to push away. You know, a flower that blooms, a child's smile, the things that God puts in our way that shows us, I'm here, I'm loving you, and you will get through this, and you will be a better person because of it. And to me, being a better person, that not only means my relationship with God, but it's how I can minister to others.
Mm.
And, you know, when we get to heaven, ladies and gentlemen, God's not going to say how many books we wrote or how many times you made a bestseller list. He's going to ask you, how many people did you impact? Did you talk to about me? And that's what it's about, always. And if I sound like I'm preaching, I'm Southern Baptist. We don't do that. But truly, that's what I mean. We are all Christian writers, and we are in a ministry. And that means whether we're writing for the general market or the Christian market, what we have glorifies God. What we do, that gift, He gave it to us, saying, Lori, Beth, Lisa, all of you, I gave this gift to you. Go with it. And I love that about God.
Mhm.
I may not be able to balance my checkbook, but
Sophia, you got your hand up?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for what you've shared, and I am truly sorry for what you have been through. I lost two adult sons in their 20s, in the early 20s. And what helped the most was having safe places to be ugly.
Mm.
Because honestly, these came about because of choices that they had made, and that was what made it hard. And given the political environment, it was not a safe place for me to be honest in a lot of my circles, in a lot of my physical circles. So finding a safe place to process and deal with stuff, and several of those safe places are on the screen, also encouraged me to be a safe place.
Mm.
For when my friends, I said, if you want to swear, swear. If you want to break something, I'll find something we can break, because God didn't get mad at David for being angry about some of that stuff. And he can handle my big emotions. And his heart has been broken too. So I think that's probably the biggest thing I learned through some of the worst times of my life.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. Seeking a refuge, a safe haven, and becoming one for someone else. That is incredible. Thank you. And I'm sorry for your loss. The son I lost had some pretty bad addiction habits too. And I get that. Hallie, I've been talking about you. I hope it's okay.
I
Of course,
have.
it's okay. I was so excited to see that you were speaking. I missed the beginning. I missed the first 20 minutes, so I'm happy that it's been recorded. I just wanted to say that seeing that you were speaking on this made me happy. I don't write anything yet, so.
Yeah. Yeah, what I did was I talked about how the Edie, Alicia, me, and then you all happened in too close of a proximity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
That wasn't an accident.
yeah, don't know why, but that's the way God had planned it, and it could be simply to help each other.
So anyway, just thank you.
Mhm.
And I love you.
Pam?
I want to encourage any of us that sometimes I was in a place where I didn't really know who God was, even though I went to church. And when I haven't lost an adult child, I did have a late term miscarriage, but there's that own kind of grief there too. And nobody could comfort me because nobody knew what to do, but they were grieving with me. And when you're in a place like that and you feel utterly alone, God comes in, and that's what he did for me. And that it's not always, sometimes we can't find a person or a place and all, but God was there. And that's what I shared the one time here on Writers Chat Room. That's what saved me. He saved me. So how can I have said to him, Lord, why did you let my baby die? You know, that
Mhm.
he's there for all of us when nobody else can be.
On the heels of what Sophia said, now that we both know that that was an issue with our sons, that at our son's funeral, my youngest one gave the eulogy, and he made a statement that has just like, okay, God, you gave him that statement, and I heard it and I'll never forget it. And he said that the struggles with addictions, if anyone has lost anyone with addictions, and yet they love Jesus, it's just the addiction is stronger. And so my youngest one said, as though he were God, he said, son, you've struggled long enough. It's time to come home. Mm-hmm. And that has just stayed with me, and just a beautiful source of comfort. And I hope sometime I can come back and teach you something that we can all laugh about instead of sitting here crying and me drinking water.
Yes, we need to have you back. I think we have some openings on our schedule, so that would be a great thing.
And a pastor had told us one time he had attended a funeral for another pastor who had committed suicide. He struggled terribly with depression. And the pastor leading that service said something that stuck with me, and that there are times when we cannot hold on to God. We're too weak. We can't. But he never lets go of us.
Amen.
And I found that so comforting in so many ways, and to be able to share that with a friend whose 26-year-old pregnant daughter shot and killed herself a couple years ago. And I was able to share that with him, that she couldn't hold on, but God never let her go.
Yeah.
He does not ever let us go. He promises that, never leave us or forsake us. And so we have to draw that comfort in and all the situations, that no matter what it is that causes our pain, he doesn't ever let us go.
Okay.
And
Yes.
I'd love to share one beautiful truth somebody spoke to me. My youngest son died due to trying to transition from male to female, and we didn't know that he was taking drugs for that. And that just made it particularly painful and frustrating in that environment. And one person spoke to me and said, if anybody understood what it was like to not be perceived physically as their true nature, it was Jesus. And that just spoke so much comfort to me that Jesus understood the pain that my child felt, and he welcomed him knowing that. And I was very thankful for that word of love and grace, and just for the fellowship of the saints and for the truth and the word of God. What you spoke, Pam, when the Bible says that no one can snatch those who are in Jesus's hand away, I held on to that. I held on to, when we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he will not deny himself.
Amen.
And the truth is what gets me through those things.
Yeah.
Not God doesn't give us more than we can handle, because
Which is a lie from the pit of hell.
yeah, and that just got me through the worst of it. So
Wow, I don't know how much writing we got done today, but we
yeah.
sure did help each other out.
Heavy,
That's
heavy stuff.
I love Tuesday mornings.
Yeah. Oh, I do too. I do too. All right. Well, this, I hardly even know what to say. It just seems so hard to wrap things up. But DiAnn, thank you so much for what you shared and for just being so open and sharing how we can take pain and tragedy and be both go deep into it, but be, know where we are so that we can share that with others too. I love the points you made about making sure that we're not being selfish. We're not saying, look at me, but how can I help heal you? I think that was very, very important. Next week, a much lighter topic. CJ Malachi will be here. I met CJ, Melissa and I both met CJ at the novel marketing conference in January. And she ran a very successful Kickstarter campaign. She's an author of YA. Her heart is truly to reach out to young girls. And so she writes for them. It's kind of a dystopian sort of story or a speculative story. Anyway, she like I said, she really studied hard on how to do a Kickstarter, and she's going to be talking about that. So we'll have her next week. If you're watching the replay, we thank you for that, but we also invite you to join us any Tuesday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, and go around the globe. Just get your time zone. We do have an international person come in every once in a while, so we never know. And we just love to have you do that and to join our Facebook group. Check out our Facebook page where you'll see all of our episodes. We are now over 300. I'm just so proud of that milestone. So lots of episodes, lots of information on those in those videos. I think that's it. So we'll see you next week on Writers Chat. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
And I can't find the record button.